I think the first time I felt fear was when I watched a movie called Coraline, which if you haven't watched it, don't, because it's a scary movie. It's not for children, contrary to what the rating says. But I watched it, and it was my first approach to a fantasy world where there was magic and spells and creatures and monsters. And after watching Coraline, I started to feel the presence of monsters, because when you're a child, you don't really distinguish reality from fiction. So these thoughts carried in me, and I started to think about it more and more often until I became afraid of them. And at night, I would fear that monsters were in my closet or under my bed. And I think we can all relate to that experience, your first fear. But what do you do when you feel fear? You look for a way out. You look for something so that you stop feeling this way. And for me, my first instinct was to turn on the light. I would turn on the light, and things would appear to be okay. But then I reached a moment where turning on the light wasn't enough anymore, and I still didn't feel safe. So what did I do? I would go to sleep with my mom. I think it's a beautiful thing that people in these times go to someone you love for comfort, because you relate to them as a safe place. And for me, my mom has always been my safe place. So it was like that for a while. If I got scared, I would go to sleep with my mom. And then I grew up, and I realized that those creatures weren't real. And so my first fear, I overcame it. And then I got older, and I recently realized that I started to feel this fear again, but a little like in a different way, because these creatures reappeared, and they were constant. But the difference is that these monsters and creatures wouldn't go away. I would turn on the light, and they were still there. I would try to run, but I couldn't, because when, these creatures weren't really real. They were thoughts, and they were ideas in my head and inside of me that I couldn't escape from. And the more I tried to run away, the more worse it got. I come from a very loving family. My mom, loves me and my sister more than anything in the world. My dad, the same. He has done everything he can for us to be there. And my sister, I don't know what I would do without her. But I start to have a lot of problems in my family. The types of problems you usually have with your family that are normal. But for me, it didn't seem like that. I started to think that I was the origin of all these problems. And I started to feel very negatively about myself, because I am someone who speaks up, who says what she doesn't like and stuff. But I started to feel like this personality of me, the term that I've always been associated with, that is the strong personality, that it was something negative, that it was someone who didn't care about other people, who always sought for their own happiness, who was selfish, who always wanted to create conflict. And so I started to run away from that quality in myself. And that repressed emotion that I had turned into pure anger, and I was irritated all the time. And then the world stopped. Pandemic hit. And I couldn't run away from it anymore. I couldn't distract myself from anything. And I started to think about these creatures again, and I would listen to them more than I should have. And so I became angry with myself. And in the act of trying to please other people, I split into two personalities. It was, with my friends, I was very accommodating. I was someone who was very nice, who always wanted to be there for others, who never seemed to be angry, who was very likable and happy all the time. Because I wanted them to see me that way, and I wanted to hold on to that personality the more that I could. But then I would go home, and my personality would switch. It was someone who was tired all the time, who didn't know how to fix things with their family, so she didn't try anymore. I talked back to my parents and my sister because I was angry all the time, and I didn't even know what or why. And things got worse and worse, and I reached a very low point in my life. I remember my breaking point. We were about to watch a movie, my family and I, and I think they didn't choose the movie I wanted. It was something very unimportant. But at that moment, when you have repressed emotions for so long, anything can trigger them. Emotions want to come out, and if you give them a chance, they will take it. So it was something silly, and I remember the whole movie, I was upset, the whole 2 hours. I didn't talk or anything. I was just thinking about it and thinking about it. And when it ended, my mother would always say, like, oh, did you like the movie or whatever? And I started to cry. And it wasn't a single tear. I started to sob uncontrollably. And I remember looking at their faces, wanting to stop, but I couldn't. I couldn't, and I felt so out of control. And so my mom, well, all I could say was, I don't like myself. I don't like that you see me this way. I don't know what to do. I need help. I'm sick of it. And I can't thank my body and my mind enough for being brave enough as to let my tears fall down. Because if I hadn't cried that time, I don't know what would have happened with me. And my mom said to me, it's okay, some things do need to change. And we talked for a little bit. We talked for a little bit, and we realized that we had all been feeling badly for some time, but it was also because we had very repetitive routines and harmful routines. It was online classes, so I would spend all day in my room locked up, and I was alone with all my creatures. And so we decided to put activities so that this routine would change. And that did help. It did help a little bit. I mean, every change helps a little bit. But then, there were times where I was relapsed. I would start thinking, again, badly about myself and whatever. But I couldn't see that what was happening or what was going to truly help me was to stop fearing myself. And so it went on for a little while until I finally reached out and I finally said that I wanted to go to therapy. And that was my way out. I used to think that I was such a bad person, that I had truly bad intentions, and that everything that I did was with true intention. And you shouldn't blame yourself for engaging in conflict when it comes with two parties. You shouldn't be afraid to speak for yourself. There's also the standard in society that women with strong personalities, someone who has determination, someone who seeks justice, is seen as unlikable or mad all the time or too bossy. But if a man has those same qualities, he's going to succeed, he's a leader. And so I realized that this thing that I've been running away from my whole life was actually a beautiful thing. That this creature inside of me was really what has pushed me to do good things with my life that I never thought possible. And it's amazing when you learn to live with your creatures, when you learn to walk with them. Because a lot of things wouldn't happen in my life that I'm proud of today if it hadn't been for them. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is always a way out, that you should look for the switch to turn on the light. And the light here is acceptance. Accept yourself for who you are. Don't be afraid. Don't think you're too much for this world. And when you discover that, you will discover a world full of fantasy that you never thought possible. Thank you.